Are you ready for some football? We're 2 weeks away from the start of the season. Is now the time to sell? Let's check the data. Hey everyone, welcome back to another Data Dive powered by Market Movers. My name is Tyler Nethercott, better known as Teapot, ready to start talking about some football. I left off last week's video, football, intentionally because it merits its own video this time of year. So today, we'll look at what prices have been doing since last year's Super Bowl, and especially over the last month. And then we'll review what happened to some of the key players last year during the season to try to make some predictions for this coming year. But before I do this episode is brought to you by Market Movers, now with 885,000 cards in our database, spanning from 1909 to 2022. From baseball to Yu-Gi-Oh!, check out our brand new pricing plan starting as low as $9.99 per month. Visit marketmoversapp.com to find out which plan might be right for you. All right, as always, this is not advice telling you who to buy or sell. This is meant to be a review of the data that can help you make an informed decision for yourself. So let's jump over and get right into it. And the first thing that I've pulled up here is basically every key quarterback in the league. I think I may have accidentally left off Sam Darnold, even though he's not the starter. I've got like 32 different quarterbacks here. If you're drafting your fantasy league, these are the guys that you're looking at in any particular order. So I threw them into price movements by player, and I'm looking at graded cards only, and I want you to guess, who do you think has gone up the most in value over the last 30 days specifically? Let's start with the last 30 days. Who do you think has gone up the most in value over the last 30 days? And I'll scroll down. It's Derek Carr. Derek Carr has gone up the most in the last 30 days. I guess even though the AFC West is completely stacked, I could actually see the Raiders finishing last in that division. I actually think there's a good chance that they will. They might still be a really good team, 500, but I think they're going to be last in that division personally. People are high on Derek Carr. People are high on the Raiders again. They had a pretty strong season last year, and his prices have been moving up. Drew Lock over the last 30 days. People showing life in Drew Lock. Personally, I think that's a big mistake. I mean, he does have DK Metcalf. He does have Tyler Lockett. I'm not sure about the rest of that Seattle offense. If you weren't drafting, Russell Wilson high last year, and if Russell Wilson's card prices went down significantly last year, Russell Wilson is definitively a much better quarterback than Drew Lock. I don't really know about the optimism around Drew Lock, but let's keep scrolling down. We've got Kirk Cousins, new offensive system. You've got Justin Jefferson talking about how he's going to be unleashed this season in the new offensive scheme. Maybe people high on Cousins for that reason. I actually think maybe the Vikings win the NFC North. Matt Ryan, new change of scenery. Who knows? We'll see what happens with him. Marcus Mariota, obviously now where Matt Ryan used to be here in Atlanta. A lot of these guys that are showing, price increases over the last 30 days are not the ones that I would personally be speculating on. So that's, to me, that's a little bit funny. It's a little bit confusing. Baker Mayfield up, I guess, getting announced as the starter up 9%. He's one that you're like, well, maybe he's got some weapons. He's got Christian McCaffrey, hopefully healthy, knock on wood. Maybe he can put together a good season and have a nice rebound. And if so, who knows? Maybe his prices can go up because they have come down significantly over the last 18 months or so. And then Carson Wentz, Trey Lance, and Davis Mills. And we'll get back behind the stop buying Mitch Trubisky movement. I mentioned that a few months ago, and some people responded in the comments that they think we should make t-shirts. Stop buying Mitchell Trubisky. I don't know how many chances he'll get still in the league. And Dak Prescott plus 6%, Jalen Hurts plus 6%. Now the one that's interesting to me is Hurts. He's actually tapered off a bit. Hurts was very, very popular at the National. Could be because we were so close to Philly in Atlantic City, but a lot of people were looking for Jalen Hurts cards. And then we'll keep scrolling down, and then let's just kind of go down to the bottom and see who's not doing so well right now. Mac Jones, down 16%. Now, something I want everybody to think about. Where do you think Mac Jones ranks this year in terms of the best quarterbacks in the NFL? Where would you rank him? I definitely don't have him in my top 15. And so last year, I made several videos talking about how I think it's, in the very least, way too early on Mac Jones. I didn't see enough to convince me that Mac Jones is a really good player. I think people were banking too much on the Patriots, on the system, on Bill Belichick, and sort of saying, oh, if he's the next guy, surely he's going to have some kind of like continuation of what Brady did in terms of fandom and people chasing his cards. Well, his values are starting to come down significantly. I'm not convinced he can get the ball down the field or make the right big throws in the big moments. We'll see this year. I could be totally wrong, but I think Mac Jones could be like, I think he's around 24th or 25th in projected points for quarterbacks in fantasy this year. That probably doesn't bode well for his stat sheet and then for his performance. Now, if the Patriots somehow run that division and upset Buffalo and Mac Jones is at the helm, again, that could be, a situation where his prices are going to rebound and go up. But I have not been high on Mac Jones. So if we're talking about the rookies from, last year, I'm particularly or personally higher probably on Trevor Lawrence or even Trey Lance than I would be Mac Jones at this point. I still think Trevor Lawrence has a lot more potential. He was drafted first overall for a reason. He's just in a really bad situation. Let's actually scroll back up, and I'm gonna change this to the last 180 days. And I'm gonna zoom in so you can't see this top person here and switch it. And let's see, guess again, who do you think has gone up the most in the last 180 days? And I'll zoom back out. Looks like it froze it there. Jacoby Brissett. So I guess the news of obviously Deshaun Watson's suspension, Brissett going to be starting presumably in Cleveland. People going in on Jacoby Brissett cards. He's a solid quarterback. He's a solid contributor. He's the kind of guy that could make a really nice career for himself, like Ryan Fitzpatrick or somebody else. Filling in as a backup, as a very viable starter when the number one goes down. And then you've still got Derek Carr there. Now Jalen Hurts, this is what stands out to me, up 29%. This is really roughly since the Super Bowl ended, right? A little bit later after that. And people are, again, really high on Hurts. He's projected on a lot of fantasy boards as like 5 to 7 in terms of points this year and where they could finish. The Cowboys are always, question marks. Are they actually going to live up to expectations, or will Philly take that division down this year? And then going down, Jared Goff. I'm a Lions fan. Don't buy Jared Goff. I'm personally not buying Jared Goff. I've had people message me and DM me on Instagram with big Jared Goff cards thinking, Lions fan, I'll be all over it. Not really. We're still in rebuild mode. The Lions are doing the right things. They're going about it the right way and starting in the trenches. But I think Jared Goff's ship has sailed personally. I don't have a lot of optimism for my Lions this year, unfortunately. It's another rebuild season, but I love what they're doing and I love the coaching staff. Kirk Cousins again right there, Drew Lock, and then you've got Tua up 11%, Josh Allen up 7%, Jameis Winston up 7%. Seems like this happens every year too. Winston prices go up and then they come crashing way back down. He comes in and he gets a start, they go way up, and then he throws 5 interceptions and they come crashing back down. I'm not expecting a lot from the Saints this year. I am expecting a lot from the Bills. I have no idea what to expect from the Dolphins. So this is kind of what's going on with these key players. Let's actually jump over to a chart for some of the, the most notable ones here, the most notable ones I would say. And I've got your top 7 here probably in terms of people that you might be speculating on, the young talent. Mahomes, Josh Allen, Joe Burrow, Justin Herbert, Lamar Jackson, Kyler Murray, and Jalen Hurts. I left off last year's class notably. I think they've got a little more to prove. But there are some notable price differences here. And one thing I keep hearing with Patrick Mahomes, and his prices of all these guys have come down the most since the Super Bowl. They've really come down big time, and they continue to come down. Everybody's saying his cards were just too high in the first place. I think that for what he did in his career up to that point, they weren't necessarily too high. They had a lot of hype baked into them. They had a lot of enthusiasm about what can this guy do for the rest of his career. But if you look at his career so far, I mean, you're talking about breaking records, MVP, just missing the Super Bowl because of an overtime rule, then, making the Super Bowl and winning it, then just missing the Super Bowl, last year in heartbreak against the Bengals. He's been there every single time. He did just lose Tyreek Hill. Maybe people think he's not going to be as good, although something that we'll look at in a moment will show otherwise potentially. But I think what's worth noting is that even if you look from 2017 to 2018 and then to 2020, Patrick Mahomes tends to have fewer rookie cards than a lot of these guys in total. So the population is Pop 3568 on his optic base PSA 10 versus 1450 on Josh Allen's. Print runs, maybe in a fluke or like Panini was kind of not optimistic about football's future, were way down in 2018. That was actually, you'll see that a lot of guys had really low pop counts in 2018, especially in Prism and Optic and Select. But again, you know, $840 versus $500, you might say, well, is that justified? I don't know. People are suddenly somehow higher on Josh Allen or think that he's a better quarterback than Patrick Mahomes. I'm not convinced that that's the case. They're both very good, but I think that Josh Allen has more rookie cards overall, different rookie cards spread out than Mahomes does, which could justify some of this price tag. But if we scroll all the way down, you can see Mahomes is the only one here, and I'm in the last the last 90 days here. I'm in the last 90 days. Mahomes is the only one who's down in that time frame. All these other guys' prices going up. And to me, that suggests, while there's some pre-baked expectation here, there's some preseason hype, could that suggest that we should be looking to sell these cards? Before we take another look at that, let's jump over and just for another comparison, look at the hollows. And you're just gonna see a similar story. Obviously the price is much higher and the pop's lower. But again, you're about 50% higher, just under 50% higher on Mahomes Optic Hollow over Josh Allen. In this case, you've got actually Herbert about $100 more than Joe Burrow, whereas on the base cards, you had Burrow slightly more than Herbert. Sometimes you see that, and I break a lot of that down in the ratios. This is why predictive pricing is so difficult, because there's so many confounding factors when it comes to how the free market operates with these players and their prices. Predictive pricing can be really tricky exactly for that reason. And then if you keep scrolling down, you've got Lamar Jackson at $610. Obviously MVP, but people need to see something more from Lamar. They need to see him actually take probably a step forward, and they really need to see the Ravens have a really strong season and upset the Bengals in that division to win the division and make a playoff push. Kyler, no idea what to think about him. Last year he was so hot. The Cardinals came out and won like 8 straight or something like that, and his prices were actually going up to start the season last year before they ultimately collapsed, and his prices came way back down. And Jalen Hurts, do you think that his prices will pass Kyler by the end of the season? Is he going to have, a really good season? Your guess is as good as mine, but obviously we've seen his prices going up, a lot of people high on him. Let's jump over to popular card charts, and what I'm looking at here is last season. So I'm looking at these same guys with their optic hollows from basically the month leading up to the season until about 2 months after the season started. So August 1st until October 31st. And you can see that most of these guys either flat or down. All these lines either flat or down, some of them hitting really low points. Burrow hitting low points. There was a lot of hype around Burrow last year going into the season. And then ultimately they came down. Now you had Justin Herbert, who saw this big spike. The Chargers were hot early, Herbert was hot early, so his prices were up. So we can scroll down and we can look at those specific numbers, and you can see Herbert was up 49%. The rest of these guys, they were all down. They were all down. So what about the year before? Now, obviously a couple of these guys won't be available. They didn't have their cards back then. But let's jump back and look at Josh Allen, Kyler Murray, Lamar Jackson, and Patrick Mahomes from 2020. And this is one of the really nice things about Market Movers is, now that we've been building this data history, you can go back and you can look at this over this time frame. And I'm looking at the same time frame, but in 2020. And if I scroll down, even just looking at this, you can see all the prices down. So let's scroll down and let's look here. 45%, 46%, 42%, 35%, all of these players down. And remember, that was in a season or a time when we saw that run back up in March of 2021, when things really hit their high point and went absolutely crazy in the market. Everything was down here. Now, there's one thing we've learned is that since all the volatility because of COVID and because of the initial surge in interest in the market, I don't know that we've yet normalized completely to be able to use these historical trends to say this is definitively what's going to happen. And really what's happening now is that the speculators are trying to out-speculate the speculators. There's a clear game here. There's a clear thing that people are constantly moving money and playing the flipping game. Some people hate that. I think it's fun. I don't have a problem with it. I just think you have to know what you're doing and what you're getting into. And it's honestly a little bit like sports betting or gambling. But what's going to happen with these guys' prices? And do you think there's going to be a big sell-off? Will you be selling off these players based on these trends? Personally, that's what I would be doing. Now, this year, I didn't buy into a bunch of these players before the season. I was, investing in certain other areas and kind of reallocating some money. I also just had a baby, so I didn't have the most time in the world to be, actively doing this. But I do think that's what's going to happen. I think a lot of these players are going to start coming down in value. It'll be really interesting to see what happens, in my opinion, with Mahomes, because his values have been coming down. They haven't gone up. Will they stabilize? Will they keep coming down? A lot of that will probably really depend on what the Chiefs do early in the first couple of months. All right, let's jump over and look at price movements here. I'm looking at rookies from 2015 through 2021 for football, and an average sale of $30 and up for their transactions, just to kind of weed out some of those anomalies and lesser known players. And I'm looking at the last year to see like what's happened with a lot of these players over the last year. And since basically the football season started last season, and scrolling down, and you can see overall, a lot of these guys really haven't gone up in value a ton. You've got Travis Etienne, that one's notable because he had that terrible injury last year. Will he have a strong season this year and have that chemistry with Trevor Lawrence like they did in college? Remains to be seen, but I can understand his prices, rebounding and going up. The guys that stand out, Hunter Renfrow, Cooper Kupp, and Deebo Samuel. Here's Mitch Trubisky. Again, I don't know why, but you've got Renfrow, Kupp, and Deebo Samuel, and there's something noteworthy there, right? What's noteworthy there is that those were the three guys last year that didn't have a ton of hype before the season. They may have even fallen off a little bit, and then Kupp got Matthew Stafford, and then Deebo Samuel broke out, and then Renfrow broke out of nowhere. Nobody saw that coming. And so these guys weren't having that hype and that preseason expectation, and then they performed really well and their prices went up. So if I jump over here and look, just as an example, I pulled up a couple of Deebo's and a couple of Cooper Kupp's cards from the beginning of the season until the Super Bowl, and you can see no surprises. Their prices just went up, pretty significantly. You've got Deebo up 223% on his Prism Silver PSA 10, 74% on his base. Cooper Kupp up a whopping 429% and 315% on his Optic Hollow and Prism Silvers respectively. So those are the guys. I did a video a couple of months ago saying, who are you looking for? Who could compare to Cooper Kupp this year in terms of seeing no expectation to having a breakout? I sort of threw out there Courtland Sutton and the Broncos. Maybe it's Jerry Jeudy, but I think with Russell Wilson there, it'll be interesting for the first time them having a legitimate, Pro Bowl caliber quarterback to potentially get them the targets. Go back and watch that video if you're interested in that. And you may be laughing saying, Courtland Sutton, give me a break. I'm not saying he's going to put up, all record numbers like Kupp did last year. I'm just saying those are the types of players, positional players, who I might be looking for to have that kind of a breakout season and actually see their prices go up from now until the end of the season. So that does it for this week's video. Are you selling your football cards right now? Or do you think that, there's any positional players that might be breaking out? Let me know down in the comments. Do you think this season will buck the trend of the last 2 years and that we'll actually see players who perform well see their prices continue to go up? Again, let me know down below, and if you would, as always, give this video a thumbs up, hit that subscribe button, and tap the little bell icon. And until next time, happy investing.